Hey guys, so I'm just going to post a quick true crime video. It's going to be the first one, so it's going to be a short one, and we're going to be discussing two different topics today. So the first topic we're going to discuss is the Muffin Man. Now, I also have not thought of a name for my true crime video series, so if anybody has any suggestions or like some catchy names, definitely leave them in the comments. So let's get into this. So the Muffin Man, which we're all familiar with as a nursery rhyme that we hear when we're children, was actually a true story. 16th century London, there was a baker whose name was Fred Thomas Linwood. And he had originally started killing off his competition. And when he got sick of that, when that didn't tickle his fancy anymore, he started to kidnap and kill children. Creepy, right? He would wait in alleyways. He would lure them to his home. He kidnapped about 15 children in total and killed them. And I don't know. He killed them, ate them. So the nursery rhyme, The Muffin Man, was created to promote awareness among the children in the area where the Muffin Man lived to keep those kids from going near him. And in 1612, it's reported that he died by choking, which is kind of like karma biting him in the ass royally. But anyways, the nursery rhyme, though, didn't come out until 1820, and Mr. Fred Thomas Linwood, he was never caught for any of his crimes. So he killed 15 children. 15 children. Now, we don't know how many adults he killed, but he killed 15 children, and he was never caught for his crimes. So the next one that I want to discuss is the case of James Bulger. This one might take me a little bit longer to get through just because it's a bigger case. So I may upload a part 2 to this later on. But let's dive right into this because it's really, really kind of messed up, but it's interesting. So here it goes. So we'll start with the 3 parties involved in this crime. We have our victim, who was 2 years old, and his name was James Bulger. We also have our 2 suspects, whose names are John Venables and Robert Thompson. They were both 10 years old. Now, these 2 boys are the youngest convicted murderers in history today. So, it's February 12th, 1993. They are at the New Strand Shopping Center. And now, the 2 boys, John and Robert, their goal was to lure a child out of the shopping center and push them into oncoming traffic. Kind of messed up. I mean, for 2 10-year-old boys to be doing this, taking a day off of school, I forgot to mention that. They played hooky from school that day to go and do this, the 2 of them. Sick individuals. But anyways, John and Robert, they lured James out of the shopping center, well, out of the store that they were in, him and his mother, in the shopping center. They then lured him out of the whole shopping center completely and a quarter mile down the road. Now, their first plan was to drown them. They went to the Liverpool Canal, and the first plan was to drown them. Well, when that didn't work because there were too many people around, they kept walking. They lured this little boy to Walton and Anfield railway station. James had at this point been crying, and there were people walking around asking him what was wrong. You know, what's going on, honey? Are you okay? Oh. And John and Robert told these people who were asking what was wrong that little James was their little brother, and he was just really sad, so that they were going to go home. They were going to bring James home. That was the story, is they were the older brothers, and they were bringing their little brother home. They were not bringing this little boy home. So they brought him to this railway station, and where they began to kick and stomp on him. They picked up a 22-pound railway fish plate, and they slammed it on poor little James. They beat him. They threw bricks and stones. They had bought some blue spray paint, or stole some blue spray paint, which they then proceeded to squirt in James's left eye. He sustained multiple skull fractures from being hit with a bar. Altogether, he had 42 injuries. 42 injuries. When they were all done beating him, and when they had their fun, they laid James across the tracks and covered his face with rubble, hoping that a train would run him over so that his death would be ruled a suicide. It's kind of fucked up, man. This is so sad. To a 2-year-old little boy, these kids did this. James was, in fact, split in half by a train, and he was discovered by a group of children a few days later. So he was hit by a train. He was discovered a few days later by some other children. And the rest of this story just goes through the court proceedings and what really actually happened to these 2 boys who murdered this other little boy. So the pathologist actually ruled that the train did not kill him, and he was killed before the train actually hit him. So that came out. But they weren't able to rule it out or limit it down to one injury that caused his death. So the police posted the abduction, and a woman recognized the boys and said that she knew them because they had paint on their sneakers, and she remembered seeing these 2 boys with paint on their sneakers, and she was able to identify these 2 boys. And on February 20th, 1993, Robert and John were arrested and charged with murder. On November 24th, 1993, they were convicted, guilty, and sentenced to 8 to 10 years. They're the youngest to ever be convicted up until the 20th century. The parents of these 2 boys, once their identity was released to the public, the parents of these 2, John and Robert, were placed into witness protection because they had received death threats and serious harassment after these boys had been identified as the killers. And they only got 8 to 10 years because of their age, but there was a petition that went out to do a minimum of 15 years, but that was ended up being overturned by a court. In June of 2001, a 6-month review parole board ruled that the 2 boys were no longer a threat, and they were released. They were released from prison in 2001, just 7 years after this happened. They were given new identities, and they were told not to tell anybody who they were previously. Now, John did tell people who he was, and he was accused of possessing child porn in 2010. He was then given a new identity, so he was given a new identity twice. He was given a new identity. In November of 2010, he was arrested for possessing 392 child pornography images. So I think it's safe to say that Mr. John never learned his lesson. And I think it's safe to say that us as parents, I know being a parent as myself, that is my worst fear, is my son being abducted and me never seeing him again. So I think what I learned from this is that we all need to be a little bit more vigilant, and we need to pay attention to our surroundings, and we need to teach our children about how to pay attention to their surroundings, because I really don't think that this should ever happen to any child. So I may or may not post a part 2, not 100% sure yet, but that's my first true crime video, guys. I'm not going to really edit this much. I'll watch it once through, but I'm not going to edit too much because I want you guys to get the real raw. But leave comments for a name idea and let me know what you think. Thanks, guys.